So welcome everyone to this I3H seminar. I'm Michael Castagnara. I'm very happy to welcome Luisa Bouwman among us, who is a pharmacist pharmacologist by training with a specialization in regulatory affairs. We already had several seminars about orphan designations, orphan regulation, and how to update it and improve it. Luisa has an incredible expertise on the topic. And so we are extremely happy to learn from her about unraveling the orphan designations life cycle in the EU. Luisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone here in the room and also in our digital room. It's an honor to be here in Brussels at the I3H Institute as a speaker today. Okay. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share my PhD research. Thank you so much to Professor Michael Castagnara for inviting me today. Okay. As he said, I'm a pharmacist. I'm a specialist in regulatory affairs. I work as a registration manager for a pharmaceutical company for more than 10 years. And in parallel, I'm also a PhD student in the field of regulatory science. My project is about orphan medicines and how the evidence to support the benefit risk assessment is being generated. And today I would like to bring you through the beautiful world of orphan medicines. Before starting, I have to say that I don't have any conflict of interest, and the opinions I may express here today may not represent the institutions I am part of. So for today, I have two main objectives for this session. First, I will present the characteristics of the orphan medicinal products approved in the last years. And then I would like to discuss with you the most relevant changes proposed by the new pharmaceutical legislation with impact on the orphan medicines. So for that, I would like to start with a very short introduction about rare diseases. Then I'd like to recap the current regulatory framework. And then I will share with you the most relevant findings of my first paper. And then we will discuss the new orphan regulation or the proposal for the new regulation. And if we still have time, if Caroline says you can continue, then I would like to share with you the first chapters of a very intriguing detective story. Okay, so I will confess something. I'm quite old-fashioned person. I don't use ChatGPT. But if ChatGPT is so good as people say, if you ask it, what are rare diseases? I would expect to get an answer saying that there are between 6,000 to 8,000 different rare diseases. Most of them have genetic causes and affect mainly children, unfortunately, and because these diseases are often life-threatening. 30% of these children will die before their 5th anniversary. And altogether, more than 30 million people are affected by orphan diseases in Europe. One of the most common challenges of the people suffering from rare diseases is the diagnostic delay. It's quite common to hear from patients with rare diseases that they need to travel to another countries to visit different specialists in order to get the final diagnosis. It takes years sometimes. And the worst part is that even after having the final diagnosis, only 5% of these rare diseases have approved treatment. And why? Well, because developed orphan medicines has additional challenges. due to the inherent characteristics of the rare diseases. First of all, we have very few patients for each rare condition, and they can be spread around the world, and this leads to complex logistical issues, the recruitment and the clinical trials. And there is also often very limited knowledge about the natural history of the disease. What happens if we do not treat that disease? What is the normal progress of the disease? Because we sometimes do not know what happens without intervention, there is also lack of knowledge about the adequate clinical efficacy endpoints, validated the biomarkers, lack of animal models. Okay, so due to these additional challenges, before the implementation of the orphan regulation, we had in Europe only 10 medicines approved to treat rare diseases. And now, today, after the orphan regulation, after these 25 years, we have more than 250 orphan medicinal products approved. So in my opinion, the orphan regulation was a success. Currently, we have two important documents for regulation of orphan medicinal products. First one is the orphan regulation number 141, implemented in 2000, where the economic incentives are explained. With this regulation, it was created a new committee for orphan medicinal products, and the process of orphan drug designation is explained. And a few months later, also in 2000, the new document, Commission Regulation number 847, was prepared to clarify two very important definitions, I would say even critical definitions, the similarity and the clinical superiority. And as you probably know, we are now in the discussion phase for the proposal for new general pharmaceutical regulation. In 2023, the European Commission published their proposal, and this new regulation and new directive will replace the general pharmaceutical regulation, including the legislation for children and pediatrics and rare disease. So just to recap, what are the European criteria to define an orphan medicinal product? At any stage of the medicine development, an applicant can apply for an orphan designation, submitting by EMA an application, and then this committee, the Committee of Orphan Medicinal Products, will assess the application and will issue a positive opinion if the product is intended to treat a life-threatening or chronically debilitating disease, and its prevalence in Europe is not more than 5 in 10,000. And if there are no other methods for diagnosis, prevention, or treatment of that condition, or in case such method exists, then the product should be of significant benefit to patients affected by that condition. Okay, then if the product receives the orphan designation, the applicant can benefit from some incentives. One is the protocol assistance, which is a type of scientific advice specific for orphan medicinal products, where the applicants can receive advice regarding the clinical development program. There are also fee reductions. Reductions can be 100%, so it can be free of charge in some cases. Access to special regulatory tools like PRIME program, Priority Medicines, which is not specific for orphans, but the orphans, more than 50% of the cases, the products that benefit from these regulatory tools. It's also possible to apply for European funding to fund the clinical research phase and other incentives at national level. But the most relevant, important, and attractive incentive for the companies is the market exclusivity, which is 10 years or 12 years in case of pediatric indications. This market exclusivity is actually a protection from market competition with similar medicines for the same indication.
So if I may, just because we had this kind of discussions with several people in the room before, can you go back one slide? We had in mind that the main push factor was the fee reduction, and the only really important thing was the market exclusivity. And what I discovered talking to Luisa is that it also opens the door to the push factors of EU fund research. So you get research funds, access to research funds that you don't have access to otherwise.
But you need to apply separately because this
but you can apply or you fast track for this funding. And so Matthias, you said that probably there was a combination. We had to do both at the orphan designation and at the funding, and that's correct here. It's already in the previous legislation.
Okay. And this is just to give you an idea about the progress from the beginning of the implementation of the regulation, and the most recent data I could find is from 2023. We see the increasing orphan designations granted. In total, more than 3,000 orphan designations have been granted by the European Commission. But of course, and it is very positive that it's still attractive. But of course, orphan designations do not mean marketing authorizations. So what I'm going to show you now is what are actually the characteristics of the orphan medicines already approved. Is there any trend we can we observe for each indications? Have they been approved? And what kind of products are we talking about? So this was actually the first PhD in the context of the first paper in the context of my PhD. It's an extensive characterization of all orphan medicinal products approved between 2010 and 2022. I extracted from the EMA website, from the publicly available database, European Public Assessment Reports, which are documents that are published there with only public information, so all confidential information have been deleted. And I've extracted from that document for each orphan medicine approved, what was the legal basis, who was the applicant, if the applicant benefited from protocol assistance, what was the type of authorization granted, was a normal authorization, standard authorization, or conditional approval, or approval under exceptional circumstances. What is the type of molecule? Is a small molecule, biological, ATMP? Was it result of a repurposing or not? Did the applicant benefit from accelerated assessment, so a shortened assessment timeline of 150 days instead of the standard 210? What was the ATC code and therapeutic area? The indication include or not pediatric population? How many pivotal clinical trials have been submitted to support the indication? And what kind of efficacy endpoints have been used? Surrogate endpoints or hard clinical outcomes, and the number of patients enrolled. Yes, Michael.
So just a clarification question. Accelerated assessment is the same as fast track in the US when the EMA expects it's a high value drug, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly. Okay, and regarding the number of orphan medicinal products approved, I've included the last 2 years, which is not included in the table of my paper, but since 2 years have passed now, I've included the more recent data. We see also an increasing through the period study, with exception of 2019, which is very positive. Even during the pandemic period, we see the highest number of orphan medicinal products approved. And this is the ATC code distribution. It's very clear that there is a high number of products which are antineoplastics, so with the oncological indications. From this analysis of this ATC code distribution, I have identified 3 subgroups of orphan medicinal products. So one big group with the orphan products with oncological indications. Then a group of products to treat genetic and metabolic diseases, and a small group of anti-infectives.
When you say that, you say that only 30% are true rare diseases, so there are not non-rare diseases that are approved? Or
Maybe it's not fair to say that they're true rare diseases, but because oncological indications are also rare disease, can be rare cancer. There are a lot of rare cancers. But I think when we say the word rare diseases, we think about genetic and metabolic disease. We don't think immediately on rare cancers, because cancer as a disease, it's an umbrella term. Cancer is not rare, but some specific types of cancer are rare. So maybe it's not fair to see through, but it's just to
rare diseases known by the public.
Yeah. So the disease also that really affect children and with genetic causes. Yeah, it's 30%. The biggest group are indeed products to treat rare cancers.
Do you mean that the population in the oncology indication is larger than the population in the genetic and the metabolic diseases, right?
No, I mean that in this period study, from 2010 to 2022, most of the products with orphan designation and proof as orphans are intended to treat rare cancers. This is what it means.
And if you have the number of patients enrolled, you analyze this, can you say, okay, 40% are for this indication, but how many patients does this represent compared to the genetic?
Yeah, I will show in the, in the next slides. Indeed, it's also interesting to make that association. Okay, so for each group, for each subgroup I identified, I have also observed that some indications are repeated, let's say, so there is competition in some therapeutic areas. In the oncologicals, we have different products approved to treat multiple myeloma, leukemia, and lymphomas. And in the group of genetic and metabolic, we see different products to treat hemophilia A and B, cystic fibrosis also, and muscular dystrophies. In the small group of infections, tuberculosis, including multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, it's the most common therapeutic indication. And then I was also curious to know who was the applicant.
Sorry, when you say common, it means that there are a number of
Repeated.
specific tuberculosis related rare diseases that come up.
In Europe, yes. And then I was also curious to know who was the applicant and the marketing authorization holder for this product. Because sometimes we have also the idea that big pharma is not interested in orphan drugs, that it's more like small, medium enterprises or startups that want to enter in this niche markets. But actually in this period, the companies with the highest number of orphan medicinal products, their portfolio are indeed big pharma companies. So on the top, Novartis in this period with 9 marketing authorizations, then Pfizer, Janssen, and GlaxoSmith, and Roche. And this is only for this period. Of course, it's not from the beginning of the regulation, but I think it would not be different because this period is quite representative of this 25 years of regulation.
So the gap, what period is this?
This is the top 3 sponsors with the more orphan medicinal products.
For which period?
From 2010 to 2022.
Then-
So 13 years actually. Okay. The most common type of molecules, 53%. But we see that the biologicals and ATMPs are increasing also through the period. I will show you this in the next slide. Most of the applicants requested and received protocol assistance of the specific type of scientific advice. The legal basis is 99% of the cases, Article 8.3, the directive, so our full application. And the type of authorization, well, 67 standard, but we see also a lot of conditional approvals, and 12% are approval under exceptional circumstances.
Caroline informs me that we have a question online.
Sam?
No apologies, this was a mistake.
You can ask a question if you want.
Okay, and here we see that actually the non-standard MAs, I mean conditional approvals and approvals under exceptional circumstances, are linked with also non-small molecules, biologicals and ATMPs, and accelerated assessment. So these three, let's say, variables increase through this period study, because often biologicals and ATMPs benefit from accelerated assessment due to the high therapeutic innovation and major contribution to the public health. And there are no small molecules, and at the end, they receive often a non-standard MA. So these three things are linked.
So non-standard would be conditional, for instance.
Conditional and exceptional circumstances.
So which means that we have more experimentation from EMA that we see over time.
No, it means that there are more some molecules like biologicals and ATMPs are more prone to non-standard MAs, because at the time of the submission, there are still additional data, clinical data needed and required. So the applicant, the marketing authorization holder is have specific obligations to fulfill, like new clinical trials or a specific follow-up study to.
Yes, but they could request the follow-ups before authorizing, or they could authorize conditionally to stimulate data.
Yeah,
So that
exactly. They
it's
authorize.
a desire of the EMA to push towards this kind of
Also,
experimentation.
yes, if the benefit risk is positive, it should be positive. It should not
Yeah,
be.
of
It needs to remain. No, because sometimes people say, well, it's a conditional approval. Maybe we are not sure if this works. Maybe we are only, this is just a big clinical trial, as I heard during the pandemic, for instance, with the COVID vaccination. The vaccines at that time received also conditional approval, and some people said, no, it's not really approved. It's just a conditional approval, and they are testing in us. So this is not true. Okay, the benefit risk assessment is positive with the information that we have at that time. The benefit from making that product available is higher than the inherent risk of the lack of comprehensive data at that time. So all decisions in regulatory are based on benefit risk assessment.
And if you compare these approval patterns with non-rare diseases, in non-rare you would have a lot fewer conditional approvals,
Yeah.
right?
Only like emergency situations as
Yeah,
COVID,
like COVID,
it was
exactly.
it was quite common
But
for
it's
non-rare,
exceptional.
but it's an exception. But indeed, this
It's regular, very
Yeah.
common.
yeah, in the orphan medicines, it's common conditional approval and approval under exceptional circumstances. The difference is that in a conditional approval, the probability or the probability that we have this additional required clinical data available soon is high, so the applicant will come back with this additional data. And then at that time, this authorization is valid for 1 year, and at that time, they will reassess, and probably the authorization will be switched to standard authorization. But in the exceptional circumstances, it's not likely that we will have a standard authorization. It will remain as the approval under exceptional
So
circumstances.
you're about to tell us how many times each of these branches materialize.
What do you mean?
You will be able to tell us it for each type of disease, how many of these conditional approvals have been confirmed or removed?
No. I didn't check how many conditional approvals were switched to standard. I didn't check that. But from the definition, what I'm saying is that from the definition, the conditional approval, you give it temporarily. So
No, I understand.
yes, that's a point. And
It's an interesting
yeah. But
project to complete.
most of the times, yes, it's likely that it will be a standard. But there are some cases when where during the reassessment with the additional data generated, they lose the MA. That can also happen. We have some cases recently. Okay, then most of the products have been approved based on one pivotal clinical trials, and about 50% of the clinical trial design submitted are randomized, double-blind, and controlled. Then we see also quite often open label, single arms, or randomized open label. Okay, here I have 3 box plots with the median number of total patients enrolled according to the type of marketing authorization. And as expected, the median of total number of patients is higher for standard MAs than conditional, and let's plus the exceptional circumstances with the lowest median number of total patients enrolled. So the exceptional circumstances is really specific for rare diseases, where it's not likely that we will get all comprehensive data. Okay, so the main conclusions. I think we can say that the number of orphans approved in each year in the European Union is increasing, shows this increasing trend, which is good, it's positive. The largest group of orphans approved have oncological therapeutic indications and are intended to treat adults, as I say. We also see indeed high competition in this group with the different products to treat the same indication. But we also see the same product with different indications, interesting. And then it's also really clear that in the last years, we have more and more non-small molecules, non-standard MAs, and accelerated assessment.
When you say it's good, are we sure it's good? I mean, the goal is not to, I mean, of course, if I have a disease, I want the drug that will treat me. But there is a question also of value for money. And some of these companies are making tons of money on these things. There are people who are saying, oops, my God, at some point we are, this stuff is already costing us a lot of money and may crowd out innovation on much less rare diseases. And, a life is a life from an exam point of view. I mean, we count in CALIs, quality adjusted life years. So the good news is that it works. The question is also at what cost it will run.
Yes, no, that's true. And I think, of course, we can also look into this question from different perspectives, pessimistic or optimistic or realistic. I think it's a fact that before the regulation, we had only a few medicines. Now we have 250. So it's an improvement. Of course, we still have a lot of diseases without any treatment at all, so there is a lot to do. I'm a regulatory professional, so I'm only analyzing the regulatory point of view. I'm not involved with price and reimbursement and budget discussions, fortunately. So this is another discussion, also super important, super relevant, it's true, but it's not my expertise. I don't know even, no, I know that some products are really expensive, and we also see that on the news, but I don't know by heart the price of each product in my country. So I cannot say so much regarding the cost, regarding the effectiveness of the product. But yeah, but the fact for me is that before the regulation, there were no alternatives. And now, at least, orphan medicines is a hot topic. People talk about it, so we could improve in some areas. Like I'm thinking now, for instance, in cystic fibrosis. Yeah, before the regulation, these patients died earlier, and now the life expectancy is in the 30s, 40s. So yeah, we are improving life quality and morbidity. Yeah, we have a question from Mark Doos.
Yes, I only would like to draw the attention to the fact that your analysis starts only in 2010. So when you analyze all the orphan drugs before 2010, the result will be quite different, I think. There will be less big companies. Most of the companies in the first 10 years were small or medium-sized enterprises. Another thing I'm thinking about is much more small molecules. We have no biologicals, no ATMPs, etc. So we all must understand that this is only from 2010 until today, not the first 10 years. Thank you.
Yeah, it's also true, especially for this part. Indeed, the small molecules is more pronounced in the last years. That's true. Okay, so let's move forward to the new pharmaceutical legislation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are really interesting times for us regulatory professionals with this discussion and the proposal from the European Commission and last year from the European Parliament on the new pharmaceutical legislation. We are now expecting this year the Council's position, and well, can be in end of 2026 or beginning of 2027 that we will have the final adoption, and then 18 months transition period. Countries need to transpose to the national law the directive. Okay, three important things for the orphans. The significant benefit, which could be another seminar only to discuss the definition of significant benefit. The proposal says that it will be only recognized if such advantage or contribution would benefit a substantial part of the target population. Then another important difference or change regarding the orphan designation is that the EMA will adopt the decision, not the European Commission anymore. So currently it's a two-step process. COMF assesses and issues the scientific opinion, and then the European Commission takes the decision. And the proposal is now to give more rights to EMA to adopt the decision and speed up the process. The orphan designation will be valid for only 7 years. It's currently unlimited. This is also to stimulate the development and make sure that the applicants will perform all studies to not lose the orphan designation. And the new definition of high unmet medical needs is also relevant because products which are intended to treat a high unmet medical need will benefit from additional market exclusivity. So it's important to define what is a product intended to treat such a condition, and it said that in such cases, no authorized medicine may exist, or then the product will bring exceptional therapeutic advancements, resulting in a meaningful reduction in disease morbidity and mortality. Of course, the EMA will need to write some scientific guidelines here regarding this definition, but I think that these three topics are relevant for the orphans. Then I try to put here the regulatory protection periods, the current and the proposal from the European Commission and the European Parliament in one slide. It was a challenge to combine everything here because it's quite complicated, can be complicated to understand. We have currently 10 years and the possibility of 2 additional years in case of pediatric indication is implemented. The European Commission proposes to decrease the baseline to 9 years or 10 years in case of high unmet medical need, and there are then still a possibility of extension if the applicant fulfills some requirements. In the proposal of the European Commission, the applicant would gain 1 year if the launch would be done in all European EU countries within 10 years. It is almost impossible. So the European Parliament does not mention that anymore. And for new orphan indications with max of 2 additional indications, additional year. This is common from the European Commission proposal and it's from the European Parliament.
This is complicated. How documented by evidence is this? I mean, is it just political negotiation between various stakeholders? Is it based on scientific facts? So what is your assessment of it?
Both. I mean, but for instance, I understand this proposal to stimulate the launch within 2 years in all European countries. I understand this requirement because what we see is that the marketing authorization holder gets the MA, but they can choose where they want to launch the product. They can choose when they will commercialize the product. Marketing authorization valid in the European Union does not mean that the product will be available in all European countries. This is something that I always mention because sometimes people forget it. It can be that it's available here in Belgium, but in Romania, if you will compare the number of products on the market, it's completely different.
I fully agree. I mean, you point to indeed a specific thing, which I understand is very important. But my question was more, okay, you go from 11 to 12 or 12 to 13. The parliament goes back to 11.5 or stays at 13. I mean,
yeah.
Is this material, as people would say?
Yeah, if you read the first pages of the proposal, they give some explanations why some things changed. They give some explanations.
No, I understand that going down in terms of protection will simulate competition and will not be good for the initial innovator. Going up, it's the opposite. But my worry is a bit more, do they, do these numbers come from pure bargaining or
So-
from science,
Can
put it
I
this way?
translate that you would like to see a curve with pattern rates at each time to see how many succeed within, the
Yeah,
next
it is.
6 months or the next year?
Is it based, for example, on history and?
Also, yeah, also for
Okay.
sure. I can tell you, for instance, that in the current orphan regulation, there is also a financial criterion. So it said that the disease should not be, should not have a higher prevalence than 5 in 10,000, or if has a higher prevalence, it's unlikely that the product will be profitable without these incentives. So this is a financial incentive not related with prevalence, and it was never used. So they explain now in their proposal that this financial criterion will become obsolete, will disappear from the regulation because it was never used. So if it was never used in 25 years, it's not relevant. So some decisions, I don't know, of course, what was the specific reasons behind all decision of the proposal. I was not there. I just read the documentation. But this is a specific case where they do not mention it anymore. They want to delete it from the regulation because it was never used. So it's, of course, also based on experience. And in my opinion, the regulation is also reactive. I mean, it should be a response to a specific problem, specific concern, like this question of the launch within 2 years.
No.
This is to respond to a specific inequity problem in the accessibility of medicines.
Okay.
But yeah, the European Parliament does not mention that anymore because, of course, the industry was also not happy with with this proposal. It's yeah, from the industry perspective, I can also say that for some companies it could be impossible to launch within 2 years due to the difficulties in price and reimbursement. In some countries, the reimbursement process takes years. So how can you launch within 2 years if the national authority do not finalize the assessment in time? So,
Okay, thank you.
So I discovered, there was another question?
There was a question online as well.
Yeah, it's Malfe who asks, what happens when an orphan medicinal product has an extension of an indication which is not in the criteria of the orphan medicines?
Good question. Good question. Now we'll,
And we have a follow-up question from Sanai.
And then Sana asked, it could be nice to extend the question to repurposing indeed, not only line extension of a drug. Does an orphan drug can more easily keep the orphan drug designation if it is repurposed for a non-rare? So it's, yes.
okay. So in the same marketing authorization, we cannot keep both scenarios. We can only have rare indications. The indications should be meet the criteria of the orphan designation. If the company wants to add a new indication, which is not rare, it's possible, but then it will lose the orphan designation of the rare disease. So the marketing authorization holder needs to request removal of the orphan designation in that case.
To keep
Or
the
submit-
market authorization.
Yeah, or submit a new marketing authorization application only for the non-orphan disease.
So either they drop completely the orphan markets, or they lose the exclusivity, but they can sell on both markets.
Exactly. So when the applicant, the marketing authorization holder, wants to change the therapeutic indication to extend or to add a new one, this is what we regulatory call a type 2 variation. And in that case, there will be a reassessment of the orphan designation criteria by the COM. So if you add an indication that it's not rare, the COM will say, well, this does not meet the criteria, so the applicant should, I think the wording is, we recommend the removal of the orphan medicinal product from the community register of orphan medicinal products. I think this is the wording. And then the applicant, of course, needs to request it to can have both indications in the same labeling, in the same marketing authorization. It's also possible to, instead of add the new indication, non-rare, in the same labeling, it's also possible to apply for a new marketing authorization application, only for the non-rare disease. This is what's mentioned in the regulation, and it will.
So I have another question on this slide, but it's 1:15. So if you don't want to answer now and we discuss afterwards, you let me know.
Okay.
So they're also revising the health technology assessments, which would be more centralized, correct?
Yeah, but it's not my specialty.
Yeah, but it should accelerate the EU-wide launch, no? Because there would be one health assessment.
Yeah, in principle, yes, that's true.
And so why don't they include that in the discussions that they have now? Because it's going on anywhere, or?
I don't know. This is, I also have to say, this is not final, okay? This is the proposal of the European Commission, the proposal of the European Parliament. This year we will receive the Council's position, and then there will be a three-part negotiation.
Trilemma.
Yeah.
No, trialogue.
Trialogue.
Trilemma means
Yeah, exactly.
they can't ever get
So
agreement.
we do not
Trialogue.
know what will be the final adoption, the final regulation. We are just discussing it, and
The lemma is Roderick.
Many trilemma.
okay. Another interesting thing is the regulatory sandboxes, which is a new regulatory framework, which will be made possible to develop and test in a controlled environment and innovative solutions. There are some eligibility criteria. I will not go into detail, but for me as a regulatory professional, I'm super curious to know how this will be in practice implemented. Okay, so do I have time for the detective story?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So there's an interesting and intriguing observation this orphan medicinal products, which is the premature removal of the orphan designation upon request of the sponsor of the marketing authorization holder, as you want to say. We see that a significant percentage of products have lose their orphan designation upon request of the sponsor. And there is an interesting paper from Montanaro where he asks quick products who benefit from this early removal of the orphan designation, because the orphan designation means benefits for the sponsor, means market exclusivity. So why would the marketing authorization holder request the removal of the designation if this means benefits? So there should be a reason behind, and there should be a benefit behind, right? Montanaro, this professor, he has a theory. He says, well, this should be maybe commercial agreements between companies, because the earlier removal of the orphan designation means removal of exclusivity of a product A would allow another company to enter on the market with a similar product without fulfilling the requirement of superiority or significant benefit. And he gives some examples in his paper. I have here one example, which is ramucirumab. This product received the marketing authorization in December 2014 to treat gastric cancer. And 1 year later, exactly 1 year later, the applicants requested to remove this product from the community register of orphan medicinal products. So there is no orphan designation anymore. And Montanaro did some cross checks, and he found that some months later, the same indication, treatment of gastric cancer, was granted to another product. And I was curious and I thought this is really interesting. Is this true? Let me investigate more. So I started a new, let's say, database with all orphan medicinal products from 2000 until 2024. And I have checked one by one all early removals. For this specific case, I can tell you that the reason behind this early removal of the orphan designation was for sure not a commercial agreement, but it was what I don't know what was the name of the person who asked this, but it was indeed the addition of 2 new indications to other cancers which are not rare. And they have approved this through a type 2 variation in December 2015. And therefore, according to Article 7 of the regulation, it's not possible to combine orphan and non-orphan indications, so the marketing authorization holder had to request withdrawal. So there was no commercial agreement in this case. This is work in progress. I'm having the pleasure to work together with Michael Castanheira and Professor George Siotis also. We are a great team of detectives. This is me, this is Michael, this is George. I'm not sure if George is listening or if maybe he already left.
No, he's there.
Is there? Oh.
I'm listening.
So we are now investigating one by one all cases of early removals of the orphan designation, and we hope to have the paper ready, submitted soon and published soon to share with you all this the solution for this mystery. And I think this is my last slide. I think, yeah.
Thank you. I mean, can you go back 1 or 2 slides? So that,
Mark had also a question.
Okay, so basically, to understand, the idea that so basically somebody had exclusivity for a special type of gastric cancer, right? Like a gastric cancer is not a rare disease. There are many types. But of course, with precision medicines, everything will become a rare disease. So in a sense, there is an issue of, but anyway, not everything, of course, but more and more things. So basically, the idea is that. So your point is that company wanted the removal to be able to go to use these drugs to do other things which are not rare, but then that allows another company to say, look, I want to remain rare, and since there is no protection anymore, I can ask myself with my therapy to get this orphan medicine. And so the question was there some kind of fishy deal between these 2 companies? And you're saying, no, it was necessary for this first company to remove it in order
to get the non-orphan indication approved, yes.
But in a sense, okay, and so, but this other rare disease, orphan medicine approval was for some new thing, which was hopefully better.
You mean this one, Bouwman?
Yeah, because it is because there was a removal that avelumab could then enter.
No,
or not. Or am I confused?
Bolsonaro makes a bit confusing in his paper and mix different things. this is only an orphan designation. In the orphan designation process, you don't need to prove significant benefit with clinical data. Okay, so there are a lot of orphan designations granted based on possible significant benefit, but the level of evidence you need to submit is not compared with the level of evidence you submit at the time of
Because
market
it's a rare
authorization.
disease. And
So-
therefore we have to be
It would be
pragmatic.
It's the designation, not the authorization.
exactly, that's what I'm trying to explain.
Okay.
Montanaro mixes things. Actually, this is not relevant at all
Okay.
for the, this is just by chance that a new product receives an orphan designation for the same indication. This is by chance that there are more than 3,000 orphan designations, so it's probably that when remove, if you remove today for your product, that tomorrow same orphan designation will be granted to another product. So but this is not relevant for this discussion. Actually, Montanaro thought that the reason behind this early removal was a commercial agreement, that I pay you to ask you to remove your orphan designation in order to let me enter. But is this smart? This is not
By
smart
the way,
because
is it illegal or
because
legal?
you are-
This kind of payment.
it's not illegal because actually one of the derogations of the legislation says that if you consent the other company can enter. But then in that case, you will consent only to a specific company for a specific product. If you remove your designation, you are open the door for other competitors. So actually, this theory, if you think with the regulation in mind and with the consequences of this theory, it does not make sense actually.
Well, unless the guy you're talking to is ready and then gets an exclusivity, then there is no
There is a high
possibility for.
risk because if I remove it today, tomorrow anyone can enter. And it's already in the regulation, this derogation that say you can consent, so I can make an agreement only with you. I don't need to withdraw my designation, I just need to make an agreement with you only. It's safer, right? I think if we analyze the regulation properly, we immediately understand that this theory does not make sense.
We have two questions online, I see,
Okay.
from Mark Dons and then George Curtis.
Okay. Also before 2010, there have been removals. And the first removal ever was Sutent, S-U-T-E-N-T. Sutent was the absolute first. And we always understood that it was because they had a non-orphan indication for Sutent. That maybe also can be a reason, I think. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for this comment. Sutent is in our database. And well, I hope we can make this available to everyone so that everyone can check and now understand, this was the reason behind this mysterious early removal of the orphan designation. Yeah, so for this paper, we included really all universe of orphan medicinal products with the early removal designation. So I think it will clarify a lot of questions and conjectures and suppositions and yeah.
And then we had a question from George.
Yeah, more of a maybe a clarification going to you, Matthias. The designation does not give you any exclusivity. You just showing your potential, but somebody can come in and it's the first that gets the MA that gets the exclusivity. Now, what Luisa was saying from a purely economics perspective is the orphan environment looks super attractive to have this kind of deals. I imagine I have my drug I still have 3 years. I remove it, you come in very shortly after, and you get another extra 10 years. So you could chain link your, let's say, exclusivity periods. And the reason why I'm saying it's an ideal environment is that because when you have exclusivity in principle, you cannot have a Me Too. It happens only in exceptional circumstances. So initially, this environment looked very propitious, let's say, to this kind of strategic behavior, or at least side payments to make room for somebody to come in. Now, I have two questions. One is when you said in many markets you have more than one orphan pharmacological treatment, only pharmacological treatment. Is this common? I mean, I've been confronted to one or two cases at most, where you have more than one treatment for an orphan disease that benefits from exclusivity. So that's question one. And the other, and I still don't have an answer, is imagine that you have something in the public domain, a generic, you repurpose it, you get a name, you get an MA to treat an orphan disease. But what would prevent, doctors from prescribing the cheap generic instead of the repurposed generic?
The definition of a generic is that the generic should have the same therapeutical indications as the reference product.
Yes.
So what would be then the reference product in that case? In case of repurposing, there is no reference product. Maybe you are talking about a very old molecule, and there are
For
some
example,
clinical data from literature saying that this old molecule, which was commercialized or have been commercialized to treat some common condition, and now it seems that it works also for a rare disease. In that case, then what the applicant sponsor should do is request an orphan designation and then apply for marketing authorization based on with a legal basis 10A, so well-established use. If the clinical data available from the literature explains the safety and efficacy of that product on a proper way. But you do not classify this as generic. Then it would be a repurposed product submitted according to Article 10A, well-established use. And it should be used in the European Union for at least 10 years for that indication. We have some cases in approved. We have some cases.
Yeah, my question was much more down to earth, is if you repurpose an old molecule and it becomes a treatment for an orphan disease with supposedly a high price, what prevents doctors or even Social Security of encouraging the use of the original molecule, which is in the public domain?
But then you are assuming that the other products with the same API, you are assuming that it's the same pharmaceutical form, that everything is the same. And most of the times when we repurpose something, you also adapt, for instance, the pharmaceutical form to be in line with the new target population you have. For instance, you have the original product was tablets. And now it seems that that molecule also works for specific rare diseases to treat children, and you can use the same molecule, but in an oral solution instead of tablets. It will be very difficult to have exactly the same products repurposed with only a different label. But even if it was exactly the same but with a different labeling, then it would be illegal to prescribe a drug for that it's not approved in their in its labeling to treat that disease. Because the repurposed drug then has received market exclusivity. So you should, yeah. I think in that case, it's really a specific case, but in that case, if you have a repurposed molecule, repurposed product with a labeling approved to treat a rare disease and other molecule, the same molecule, where the labeling does not include the rare disease, then you should not prescribe the old one, you should prescribe this one. Do you know any case? I don't remember any case like that. I remember some cases where
I don't want to occupy time and space. So thanks, I cannot understand, but there was one particular CTX in Holland. Anyways, it's thanks. I stop.
And we had another question from Mark.
To answer the first question of George Siotis, the rare indication with the most orphan drugs authorized in the European Union is pulmonary arterial hypertension. If I'm not mistaken, they have 9 orphan drugs authorized for one rare indication. Thank you.
question, comments?
I have too many questions to ask here. It will take months.
Are there any questions or
No.
further questions on the?
No,
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.